So we have a fraudulent statute, an illegitimate process. We have a significant plurality of the American, I should say majority of the American people who reject it, and we can't kill it. President of the United States says no. And the Republicans will not use the power of the purse to stop this. The Republicans also will not use the power of the purse to stop what will be, in my view, the greatest act of despotism in modern American presidency, when Obama, and he will, without any statutory authority, will abuse his executive authority to change our immigration laws and policies. And this will be precedent that he will use in other areas as he continues to get away with it. The only power Congress has to stop this, short of impeachment, is the power of the purse. Now, using the power of the purse means, when you're up against a man like Obama, that the government might be shut down. The government has been shut down 20 times before, since 1974. The government was shut down for short periods and longer periods, if I recall correctly, about half a dozen times when Ronald Reagan was president. And yet you will find the Bushies attacking Ronald Reagan for not doing enough to cut spending, as they continue to push and try and clear the field for their friend Jeb. And yet Reagan did all he could. And when you take out defense spending and you look at discretionary spending where a president has some significant authority, actually absolute spending under discretionary spending went down almost 10% during Reagan's 8 years. Certainly hasn't happened since. Spending skyrocketed in every respect under subsequent presidents, Bush 41 and Bush 43, and subsequent Democrats, particularly this one. If a president isn't willing, if a Congress isn't willing to exercise the power that the framers gave it, and you have a despotic president who's willing to abuse his office and conduct himself outside the Constitution, then the nation loses. A government shutdown is the goal. A government shutdown is the reaction of a despotic president having a temper tantrum. A despotic president who has designs on society. Barack Obama has done more to destroy the power of Congress than any president in American history. And he's done this while the Republicans have controlled, for most of his presidency, the House of Representatives, and now control the Senate. By giving up the power of the purse, and by that I mean saying we will not shut down the government, the Republicans are doing as much damage to the power of Congress, to Article 1, and our constitutional republic as Obama, because they are bowing to his actions despite their protestations. Notice how I mentioned this. We will not shut down the government. This is the mantra of the Republicans. As if the government shut down, it's their responsibility, not Obama's. We will not shut down the government. They play right into Obama's hands, right into the left's hands. This happened today, yet again. McConnell had a news conference, and it went like this: cut 9, go.
Will you be able to follow through with your pledge to have no government shutdown if the president goes ahead with this executive order? So many Republicans are saying the spending bill should be tied up on this. Can you follow your end of the bargain on that?
We'll not be shutting the government down, threatening to default on the national debt.
There he goes. How does shutting down the government threaten default on the national debt? This man has been in Washington forever. He knows that's not true. The government has been shut down 20 times before. And the national debt, we did not default on the national debt. It's virtually impossible to default on the national debt. So McConnell is making the left's argument. We will not be shutting down the government, meaning the Republicans in Congress, when it would be Obama shutting down the government and threatening to default on the national debt. They wouldn't be threatening to default on the national debt. They are self-surrendering. I've been talking about this for months. I talked about it in the last government shutdown. The Lilliputians out there who support capitulation and surrender when it comes to defending the Constitution and the rule of law claim that you and I are the extremists, that nothing good comes of a government shutdown. Well, whether anything good comes of it or not is not the point. The point is less good comes of a centralized, authoritarian president. And so I would ask Mitch McConnell, how do you stop Obama if not through the power of the purse? I would ask John Boehner, how do you stop Obama if not for the power of the purse? I would ask all the parasites, the hangers-on from the prior Republican administration, how do you stop Obama if not for the power of the purse? Now you understand why George W. Bush barely even used his veto pen, because of the advice, among other things, he was getting. It's one thing to beat your chest and jump up and down, which is essentially what McConnell and Boehner and the others are doing in the face of a lawless, despotic president. But that is not an excuse for inaction. And I am saying congressional inaction is as damaging to the Constitution as Obama's actions. He can't get away with this unless the Republicans let him get away with it. In Kentucky, you just reelected Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell was just voted the majority leader of the Senate unanimously. We know this because his staff leaked it to the media. Unanimously. No challenge. So there's no change at the top of the Republican Party. Harry Reid was just elected again, the Democrat leader in the Senate. There's no change at the top of the Democrat Party. Obama has lurched further left since this election, and the Republicans have just surrendered. They're like Neville Chamberlain in that regard, surrendering to tyranny. This Senate will come and go. These senators will come and go. But the damage that is being done to our republic, what's left of it, will be left to you and your children and your grandchildren to reckon with. This is a huge problem. Now, we know that Obamacare is a fraudulent statute. We know that the advertising was fraudulent. We know if this were the private sector, the SEC, the FCC, the FTC, the U.S. attorneys, the public integrity section of the Justice Department would all be descending on the individuals and the companies that were involved in such fraud. But here, the fraud is treated as positive public policy, as compassionate public policy. I want to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, we didn't even spend that much time, Mr. Producer, on pulling this together. This could go on for an hour. Right? For on and on and on. We pulled together on our own, Mr. Producer did, members, Republican members of Congress talking about repealing Obamacare. Republican members. And put together a montage. Mitch McConnell, Kathy McMorris Rogers, Bob Goodlake, Steve King, Marsha Blackburn, Ann Wagner, Renee Elmers, Martha Roby, Kevin McCarthy, John Boehner, Jackie Walorski, Paul Ryan, Phil Gingrey, Steve Daines, Luke Messer, Chris Collins, all Republicans. And I want to remind you of what they have said about Obamacare. And I want to remind you that these Republican leaders have surrendered the power of the purse, making it almost impossible. I can't even think of an alternative way to take down 85% of Obamacare. That's what Paul Ryan said on this program several years ago through the reconciliation process. Cut one, go.
The Democrat health care law has made things worse. Americans want it repealed, and that's precisely what we intend to do.
Let's repeal this health care bill.
This is a bad policy. It needs to be taken off the books, and we need to repeal and replace it with something better.
The only way to change this is by repealing Obamacare in its entirety.
American people need a full repeal of this train wreck legislation.
We must repeal Obamacare.
It is a malignant tumor. It's metastasizing on American liberty. It must be ripped out by the roots and completely repealed.
The first step to a stronger Medicare is to repeal Obamacare.
What we're going to do is focus on the health care bill and the repeal of that.
Mr. Speaker, today we are once again voting to totally repeal the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, Obamacare.
Here I rise today in support of H.R. 45, a bill that will repeal the president's devastating health care reform law, commonly referred to as Obamacare.
Thousands of Montanans responded, and by a 3-to-1 margin, they made it clear that Obamacare needs to be repealed.
I rise once again today to speak out against Obamacare and why we must repeal it.
I rise in support today of Obamacare repeal.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 6097, the repeal of Obamacare Act.
This country can't afford Obamacare figuratively or literally. Obamacare must be repealed.
We could have done an hour of that. I told Mr. Producer to stop after about a minute and a half. Those are all Republicans, including the two Republican leaders in the House and in the Senate. Now, I want to know how they're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. First, repeal, if they're going to replace it. But they all said repeal, did they not? They all said repeal. They all campaigned on repeal. I can pull those campaign ads if I must. When Mitch McConnell says, we are not going to shut down the government and threaten default on the national debt, Mitch McConnell is dissembling. They would not be shutting down the government. They would be sending a bill to the President of the United States that repeals Obamacare, as they said they would. He would be shutting down the government. And even if he did, as in the last 20 times, that would not threaten the default on the national debt. We never defaulted on our national debt. The last 20 times the government was shut down. So why is McConnell saying these things, ladies and gentlemen? The answer is they have no intention of repealing Obamacare. I told you this when it was passed, and I said I was sorry to bring you the news. I'm just the messenger. The Republican leadership today, and unfortunately too many of the Republican members, are neo-statists. They embrace most of big government. That's why when they're in power, they don't shrink it. That's why when George W. Bush had a Republican House and Senate that he inherited, for 6 years, he did nothing to effectively shrink the size of government. And he barely exercised his veto. This is where we are. Don't be mad at me. Be mad at them.